Well, hello and welcome to SRL360. It's back, people. All brand new and sparkly. I'm joined by Eddie Oliver, Liam Rodgers, and Tyrone Clay tonight. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Yeah, we're
Um,
back.
Yeah, good to
New
be back.
look. Good to
Yeah.
be here.
yeah,
It's
look, it's a
exciting.
good look too.
Oh, it certainly is. I spent quite some time on this look. Well, we are going to be taking a bit of a deep dive into some teams' off seasons, into every team's off season. In fact, we're going to be going over some key losses, some key gains. Then you boys will give a little ladder prediction, and we'll move on to the round review. Are you guys ready to do all that?
Keen. Let's go.
Absolutely, yeah, as
Rock
keen
and
as it
roll.
gets.
All right. Well, I guess we will start off then with the Melbourne Storm, the new kid on the block. Will Kay, the captain, he's made some good signings, and what catches your eye about the way he's recruited this season?
Well, you don't have to look too much further than some of the star-studded forwards that they brought in just to start off with. I think that I have to double check signings list of his name. Yeah, Tiranga View. He's an absolute star. That's not even getting into Punch Bros. Marcus, obviously the co-captain there. So they've obviously got a lot of strike power there. Then bringing in Sonny Tyre at 9. And then you just look at their back 5. It's absolutely stacked as well. You've got Corey Bell at fullback and then NBT on the wing with, I assume it's going to be Oldfield on the other side. So yeah, they're shaping up to be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely. And with making a new club, you also want to bring in the rookies, because they're the ones that are going to build it up, shaping the future. And for those rookies, you want experience. And Kay's done that with himself. Malchus, the Punch Brothers, as Liam mentioned. But you need that experience in the side to show the way. Samuel Herbin, especially in those key areas. Herbin and Kay in the halves, they're going to lead the team around the park well. But then also the backs, that bit of spark. But then also the rookies who have got that resilience and got that just raw aura about them, wanting to push and just wanting to compete for the top spots on the side.
Yeah, well, Riley Murray's not going to go inactive anytime soon. We know that. So I reckon they've done a pretty good job.
100%. Could not agree more with what you said.
I think for me the key definitely is their forward pack. They've definitely strengthened that. I mean, you look at their back 5. They got some big guns in there: Corey Bell, Hunter Broughton Thompson. But other than that, a lot of them aren't superstars. Whereas you look at their forward pack and it's absolutely stacked.
Yeah, no, definitely though.
All right, well, I guess we'll move on to your team, Liam, the Auckland Warriors.
Afterwards,
I think
let's go.
I think everyone other than Liam has some pretty strong opinions about the recruitment strategies from Bunsey and McCartney and yourself, Liam. So Eddie, why don't you kick us off?
Definitely, and talking about key gains before we move on, Aaron White, Hugh Snow, Marcus Square, and Ugor McCuzzy. A lot of experience, but then also at the same time, you've got that depth coming in with Ugor, and he's an effort player. He's the one that's going to get you those meters. He's going to make the runs. He's going to take the ball when everybody else has their head down. He's a small little fella, a lot of spark, and then you got the big, gigantic player on the wing, Marcus Square. Reminds me of Johnny Dokulich, who's at the Knights at the moment. We'll get to him later, but absolute huge unit, and they need to watch out with him under the high ball.
He's enormous, isn't he?
Massive.
No, Square was that was a pretty fun one to draft. I think with our culture, we've definitely got a lot of guys who are kind of shake the snow globe a bit in terms of their behavior in the SRL. So obviously bringing in Yegor and Marcus kind of just adds to that. So it should be pretty fun. But honestly, of all those guys, the one that excites me the most is Hugh Snow. I think his kicking game is just fantastic. Square, hopefully he does well, but obviously those are some massive shoes to fill with Broughton Thompson.
Yeah, I think it's hard to replace a player like Broughton Thompson, who's done well for many, many seasons. And Marcus Square is a good replacement for him. Just big, athletic.
Not only has Broughton Thompson performed well over the past few years, but he's done it in a team that has struggled quite a fair bit. Because you'd be flat out lying to say that the last season the Warriors weren't struggling. But if I had to point out who I thought one of our best players was, it was still MBT, and he was still hyped in sheds and everything. So that's like put him behind Marcus, and then you've got the kicking game of Will Kay to help with that field position. I think he's going to have much better opportunities.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Clay, you touched on replacing Nahana Broughton-Thompson there, and I'd just like to draw the attention to that idea of replacing players. I think you look at their three big losses, the Warriors: Nahana Broughton-Thompson, Sean Walker, and Joshua Corcoran. And I've got to say, Liam, I think there's a downgrade on every single player there. Aaron White or Marcus Swear, both kind of not quite proven yet. Aaron White in particular, he played for the Rabbitohs last season, didn't really go too well. And Marcus Square, well, he proved himself a bit in the mines, but it's a whole nother step up. And I don't know if Hugh Snow can touch Joshy Corcoran's prowess with that boot you were talking about earlier. So I think
I'm actually of the opinion that Hugh Snow does get him with the boot, but it's everything else that Josh was better at.
Well, I mean, fair enough. I can see that. I thought Joshua Corcoran's kicking game was absolutely elite, though. So
It's pretty decent.
I'm not too sure about that one. I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, of course, because obviously, what we see in the Sims and what happens on SRL game day, they're always going to be completely different things.
Yeah.
So, I can make whatever predictions I want about the season, but we're not going to know until the games actually happen. Because at the end of the day, all you can do is sign the guys that you think fit the puzzle piece the best, and then kind of hope for the best.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. We'll move on to again your team now, Eddie. The Parramatta Eels. They finished second last on the ladder last season, and it doesn't appear that they're going to be doing much better. We'll let Liam take it this time.
Yeah, just taking a look at it, I reckon there's obviously, because you see a lot of different things happening in the league, but when you look at the Eels, we've got, you can see those key losses, like Brody Kennedy. He absolutely came out of the gate storming last season, with the tries he was scoring. And, they weren't exactly gimme tries either. They were full field tries from absolutely anywhere on the field. He was an absolute strike weapon. Levi Raymond, he was always holding his own every game too. So to kind of go to a rookie and a sophomore in replacement of those, it's, it brings about a bit of doubt. Obviously, Luke Shaw, he's pretty experienced in the SRL. I dare say there's a reason that he's made those selections. Rico Manu, obviously, he was outstanding in the mines. But like you said about Marcus, Jack, it's a completely different level. I think how Oliver goes in terms of stamina will be interesting to see as well. But I do remember commentating his debut at Brisbane, and Jesus Christ, he set up some tries.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. I think a lot of it obviously just depends on that forward pack. That said, but the Eels, honestly, their merry-go-round for gains and losses is actually really small this season.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, Liam. And, it's all over the place. But Luke Short, sort of, this is my first time being in there with him. And he sort of, he wants to create a community where all players are willing to sacrifice, not for the individual self, but for the team. And no matter of performance, he still gives them the chance. But before signing, he talks to them and all that stuff. And I remember the process that he went through with me, sharing me sims and stats and all that stuff. And his thoughts have very wanted me. And, that 80-minute hooker position is where we both came down to. And he definitely takes the player's opinion a lot more to heart than himself. And he wants the player to be happy, but then also at the same time, he wants the player to understand what we are doing is for the team, not just for their individual self. And, Riker and Cody Ogg, they're all in the chat. They're not always active, but they're on the same basis with him and also, the vice captain, that what we're doing is for the team, not for your individual self. There are about 2 players on the bench. They're only going to be playing 20 minutes. And, that's with Phoenix Murphy and all that stuff. But sort of losses, Levi, that is huge. The versatility that Levi has playing in the halves and at hooker is absolutely out of this world. He's shown it in all levels of SRL. And that's a big pickup there for the Broncos. But coming in to replace it, I'm sure that myself and, Riker and Cody Ogg, I've played with Riker as well. He's an amazing person. And, it's not like he's fresh. He's been in the mines for 2 seasons. He's built up his stats and
True.
how he wants to get about in the SRL. So it's not like he's going to have cold feet. He's going to hit the ground running. And he certainly is a quick live wire at the fullback there, as he showed he was for the Swarm. And the Eels, well, they're up and down last season, and they're going to be given a chance early this season to change the doubters.
Yeah. I think, as you touched on with Brody Kennedy and Levi Raymond leaving the club, personally, I think it's the 2 keys to their attack. I think it was what drove them last season. And with them 2 gone, I reckon it's going to be more difficult to get up higher in the ladder. And taking Reicherman and putting him starting fullback, it's a very big gamble. And if it doesn't pay off, there could be consequences for Tano.
Do you guys get the feeling that we're seeing more of a phenomenon with rookie fullbacks in the SRL now?
Oh, I mean, Dom
Dixon
Ponkston,
and
yeah.
Ponkston are the
Yeah.
first guys that I think of, and now we're gonna have Manu.
Yeah, well, I think it's just a simple fact of there's a few clubs that are hoarding a couple fullbacks.
Well, I was going to say there are a few clubs out there that have two at least up to 3 that superstar fullbacks. Broncos, for example, Julia was giggling
Yeah, I
about
was
it.
gonna
Joey
say.
Kelly, Brody Kennedy, and just having, and then also at the Storm as well, Samuel Herban, Corey Bell. There is there are players all over the place that can play fullback, but are in other positions, and that's just how good versatility. I was already talking about Levi Raymond. He's another example. But then you have your Samuel Herbans playing in the halves. He's played in the centres. They're all over the place, and that's what makes these players so, valuable and wanting. And then But also, there is a good side to that. It allows these rookies to come through. Raika Manu and Dom Ponkston, you already spoke about it. And there are so many rookies in the back line there for the Knights that they could be all over the place, and they could play anywhere. But the only thing that's going to come down to is time will tell. Once round 1, round 2 comes around, we'll see if these players actually belong in their positions, and we'll see if they'll actually perform for their individual side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much agreed there. And I will say, Eddie, I actually quite liked what you spoke about with Luke Short and what the process was like joining the Eels, because you don't actually hear those stories too often out in the open about what it's like to actually be recruited by certain clubs.
No.
So I thought it was really cool that you dove into that and just explained what it was like.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's just Luke Short. He puts the player before himself, and then also he wants to... It's not like he's signing you in the dark, right? He's going to tell you everything that he wants you to do, everything that he expects of you. And, you want to go into a contract knowing what's going to happen, and he knows what my contract's like, and he knows what it's going to be like at the end of the season. And so he does for the other 16 players that are in his team, and also his dev players. He's talking to them as well. So nobody's in the dark of the Eels. Everybody knows what they're doing. They just need to hit the ground running, and we're very hoping that we can hit round 1 with a bang.
Look,
Sounds
I
like a plan.
think the last point we'll add on the Eels is sometimes this is how I feel, is that sometimes sitting back last season you sat there watching the Eels games and you're like, God, if they don't have Brody, what's it gonna look like? I think that we're gonna see that reality this season, and I don't know if they can cope with that.
Definitely.
I hope they can, for Luke Short's sake, for your sake, Eddie. But if you thought the Eels were pretty bad last season, losing your 2 best players now, it's going to be a tough uphill battle for them. That's for certain.
Yeah, no, it definitely will be. It's a team effort in the SRL these days. And, well, Brody Kennedy, he got the Eels out of some nicks last season, but it's going to have to be everybody. All 17 players are going to have to step up. Because Luke Short says everybody plays a role into a win. It's not a one-man game. It's 17. And they need to be out there, and they need to be on their best.
Yeah, well, I think that just about wraps up the Eels. Our next team that we're going to move on to is another team struggling this season. Mark Lee, he's done a good job to just scrap together a team full of rookies. It's the Newcastle Knights. What do we think about them, Clay?
Yeah, you said about there's a lot of rookies in the Knights, and I think they've with the players that they've lost such huge players like Robbo Mobiston, Robbie Elms, Jack O'Neill, Logan Strange, all to retirement. So it's going to be very hard for them. I hope they do well. It just depends on how the rookies work together to bring this team up and get them up, maybe even pushing for near finals if it's possible.
Yeah, well, I think the losses of Strange and O'Neill are going to be massive. Those are the two big ones.
Founding signings too.
Yeah.
So they only got the one season to build that culture.
And it wasn't particularly a season to be remembered either. They did pretty well towards the end. They went on a little run, but again, finished 3 from the bottom of the table, and I just don't know where the Knights go from here, to be honest.
Yeah, well, they're probably going to be a team that looks at themselves and is mostly just figured on developing as opposed to the winning and competition in every single game, I'd imagine. Because if you look at, like, it's those key losses, but it's also the fact they haven't really attracted anyone, which, like, obviously I don't know anything about the circumstances behind that. There could be a reason that, don't know, but the actual truth of the outcome is that they're going to be running essentially a team of rookies.
Yeah.
And whether that's going to work, well, it'll probably take a miracle or two. I've seen miracles happen before. Generally not in the world of computers too often. But yeah, it's because you look at those losses, like I'm at the Warriors, we're still kind of trying to bounce back from when we lost Logan Strange. That was 2 clubs ago, right?
Yeah.
He's gone now. So for them, when they built their entire club's foundation on having Strange and O'Neill, for them now to kind of have to bounce back is going to be really tough. And I also think that losing Oldfield is going to absolutely suck for them as well. Mobiston too. Like there is a lot here that they're going to have to try and scrap together a replacement for. And hopefully it goes well because obviously I've got a ton of respect for Dom Pongston. He's a good mate of mine. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, well, I think we'll move on to the next club then, whose main key gain was from the Knights, Robbo Mobiston. We're talking about the Cowboys. They haven't really had too much movement. They've lost a couple players and realistically only gained Mobiston and a couple rookies, but I think they're sitting in a pretty good spot at the moment.
Oh, they're outstanding, aren't they? In terms of, because you have to remember these guys, they were the SRL premiers in the season before this. I think it was season 4. So if you look at their losses, obviously losing Moscow on the wing sucks. Replacing him with a rookie, Kelly, I think. I'm not sure if he'll be on the wing or if he'll be in centers though. To be able to bring in Callum Murray, who's a pretty decent rookie as well, but Mobiston is a huge signing for that forward pack, especially given that they're trying to replace Kalsakau. On top of that, losing Snow, which as much as I talk about how he's a massive gain for the Warriors, I don't think that he's going to be an enormous loss for the Cowboys, purely because they've got Kieran Wells, who's going to be stepping up a bit more into that role. Him and Wallace are going to be able to split the duties like a more traditional SRL spine.
Yeah, no, definitely got to agree with you there. But also, again, they've lost quite a bit here, the Cowboys, Moscow and then Kalsakau and Snow. But then at the same time, they have those versatile players with Moana, Wells, and Wallace. Wells moving to that number 9 position, Wallace moving into the halves. Then also Moana, he can play 9, he can play 6, he can play 7. He did it in the Aotearoa State of Origin, and he was the best player in the second game with 2 tries and 3 try assists.
Yep.
And, those key gains. Kobe Kelly, he'll be on the wing. Mobiston, well, that's just going to add depth and just more confidence to their forward pack. And then Callum Murray, he's going to be a gamble, but they've got the players there to nurture him, to build him up, to give him confidence, and to just lead him the right way with his SRL career. They're honestly looking really good, and the heartbeat of the side, the beating heart of the Cowboys, Chris Lord, he's going to get them over the line any day of the week. They did it in season 4, and I reckon that they'll be cracking really close this season again.
Yeah, 100%. Could not
I
agree
think that's
more.
about right. And another point for the Cowboys is that they were outright the most. They had the most +6 upgrades during the offseason, which can't be understated. The importance of that. It's really gonna. We'll see the impact of it because last time we had off-season upgrades, it was +10. They had a massive impact on the season. The commissioner has lowered the amount of points you get from it, and I'm not sure if it'll have the same impact, but if you're a Cowboys fan, well, you're probably hoping it does.
No, bring back the +10s.
God.
Well, no, definitely. Just before we move on with the +10s, the grand final last season, season 5, the 2 top teams who bought them was the Sea Eagles and Raiders, and they were in the grand final. So
Wow.
it's been seen previously that it doesn't have an effect, and those 2 teams were the highest who actually bought those. So it might not have the effect this season as it was only a +6, but we'll never know until we get to that time period.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. I actually didn't know that one.
And the bottom team, the team that bought the least amount of upgrades, finished last.
Oh,
Wow,
there you go.
okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it is either, and it'll be interesting to look back at the end of this season and see if that has any correlation again, or whether that +4 that's been taken off has made enough of a dent in that to kind of equal it out.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a really interesting talking point. I actually love that because it's like there's like being able to have the +6s or +10s. It's a fantastic thing because it's a way for people to not only boost their own player but also support the SRL more.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I think it might be time to move on to our next team, Tyrone Clay. It's your Rabbitohs. You guys have signed pretty well throughout the season. A massive forward pack boost in Bennett and Cahill. Liam Rodgers, what are you taking away from the Rabbitohs off-season?
Yeah, I think obviously that's a pretty big gain in turnover. I think that's if you look at some of the losses, I think the losses don't really quite compare to the gains, with the exception of maybe James Thorne. I think Downey's gonna go all right at the Raiders, but if you look at who they've gained, Bennett and Kalsikow, those are huge. To be able to have those guys joining their forward pack just completely lays a different platform, especially when you're looking at they've kind of gone all in with Hellier as their hooker, which I think that's not a bad idea either, considering his performances in last season. You got Moscow as well, who I thought was fantastic at the Cowboys. So I think that the Rabbitohs off-season, in terms of recruitment, I think they've gone pretty well.
Definitely have to agree with you there. Jesse Bennett, Cahill, hell yeah, who proved himself at the Panthers last season in that number 9 position. And, he did very well there, considering he was only there for half a season pretty much. Starting number 9, he played his skin out. And then also some of their, signings there, Filippo Gould, Harris Andrews. Very good minds players. Filippo Gould, he's a very strong worker, and he gets the job done. But then also the key losses, Ash Turner, Aaron White, Jack Tedesco, James Thorne, that's a massive one. Chase Williams and Matt Downey. That list, covers key positions on the field. James Thorne, in that hooker and half position. Jack Tedesco, hooker again. And then Ash Turner. So they've got those positions covered with bringing Daniel Hellier in, and they've done their best to cover it. But you just don't know how it will gel, and it might take a while to warm up for the season ahead.
Yeah. So I really, we've strengthened our fullback a lot. Bennett, Cahill, Hellier. Also, I like the signing of Moscow to try and boost every position on the field as best as possible. And with Moscow gives another good winger alongside me. And you got Gould, which is good forward depth. Also Andrews, which is another good outside back depth. Overall, we built a we've built an all-round side, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you guys were talking about James Thorne being a loss. I I think it's a pretty big gain for us guys at the Broncos, but like similar to Hugh Snow, I don't think it's a massive loss for the Rabbitohs because Daniel Hellier was one of the like surprise packets of the season last year. I think it's got to do with his pinpoint passing, but he has been insane out of hooker. I wouldn't be surprised if he has an absolutely insane season and the Rabbitohs go on a bit of a run.
Definitely.
Well, is it time for the Raiders now?
Indeed.
Because they're next up. Why don't you take us away, Eddie?
Definitely, they're massive signings here for the Raiders. Cahill joining his brother back there. Josh King. A lot of depth coming, rookie depth coming in with Josh King, Ruben Mobbs. They're very good players, hard-working Josh King. He was there with the Bathurst Blue Tongues. He won the premiership, and he's coming in all guns blazing here, playing in the centres this week for them as well, from what was seen on Team List Friday. And then also the losses, that they've lost a lot. Leki Tua, Feu, Mayava, and Mataus. The halves, the backs, the forwards, it's all gone, but they've done their best to bring in depth here, and it's looking pretty good here for the Raiders, Liam.
Yeah, no, I think that some of the signings that they've made, I wouldn't say that they're enormous names, especially in the. Well, actually, no. Cahill he's a pretty renowned name in the SRL, but they're not like superstar signings. They're more just guys who improve their team. Yeah, exactly. And like having spoken to Jordan a lot, because he's a good mate of mine, and learning more about the philosophy of that team, the signings make a lot more sense. They definitely have their own way of doing things, the Raiders, and obviously it's worked pretty well for them given the past few seasons. They've had some pretty decent success, a grand final appearance, another grand final appearance, 2 consecutive ones actually. So it's pretty decent. Obviously some of those losses I can't imagine were like enjoyed to make it how a few. He's sorry if I butcher that name, but he's an absolute gun of a player, and he's going to do some awesome things in the Storm. Leki Tua is an absolute gun as well, so having to replace them is going to be a bit of a tough challenge.
Yeah, no, it definitely will be. But also, just going back, Josh King, he's a second row lock center, only having 85 speed. Clay, do you reckon that's going to be a defensive hazard for them moving early into the season?
Yeah, I think it could be. Definitely could be, but if he works on that, I think it could be a different story.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting that they're playing him in the center role. They've got they don't really have any other depth. I'm wondering why they didn't draft a center.
Yeah, definitely. I think it all went to the Knights.
They swooped them all up.
Yeah.
Yep.
It very well could be that. I think it's time to move on to the Panthers then. Jacob Morrison taking over as captain. He's had some big losses, but he's also recruited pretty well. His forward pack's definitely his strength. Clay, what do we reckon about the Panthers this season?
Yeah, as you touched on, they gained well considering who they lost, but also one of their losses, I think probably their biggest loss, Kane Chapman Kenny. He's just there when you need him, and now with the Penrith side, they don't really have a standout fullback in their lineup.
Yeah, they definitely don't. Nathan Fish is going to be playing there. I don't know if he is. Obviously, he had a few seasons there. He used to be very good, but he's kind of slumped off ever since. I know they were talking about Jacob Morrison playing there at some point. They're definitely going to have to try to go for like a mid-season trade, I think, because their fullback options are not very good.
Yeah, no, definitely. They're not there at the moment, and there's no like renowned player who's going to be known for playing fullback. And another thing with bringing in, the Wilson brothers with Bailey and Seamus, but they've put Seamus in number 3 again. The same with Josh King at the Raiders. But what's really interesting about that is they've got John Boy Maiava on the bench, and he's a winger. He can play there, and they choose to put a second row on the centers. That's something that you have somebody at that pace on the bench, and you don't put him in the back line, Liam.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, I guess, because obviously we've had team lists come out pretty recently, and you can see what Penrith have kind of done. I'm a bit confused personally by the decision to have John Boy and Marab on the bench. Maybe there's something that he's cooking, Jacob, that we're not 100% aware of. But we'll have to wait and see. But it's a bit strange, especially because I believe O'Shea Ole, another one of them of the bench, also isn't a forward. He's a 5'8" half, I believe. So it's definitely a bit just a bit strange in terms of the utilization of those subs. But obviously we can't really judge it until it happens, I guess, and we'll have to see what happens then.
Definitely. Well, they definitely signed well. Logan Guys, Blair Curtin, Lennox Prakash. Their forward pack is strong. Wilson. But what they're missing is what Julie and Tyrone have already said, the fullback. That nobody's standing out. Nobody's sort of back there with that spark. Your Brody Kendys, your Joey Kellys, and all of those types of players. You just need that spark at the back. You need that well-renowned player who's going to break the line, who's going to do something for your team when they're on the back foot. And I'm just not seeing that at the moment with the Panthers.
Yeah, well, all right. I think it is time that we move on to my team, the Brisbane Broncos. I'm not going to say too much about it, but Liam, I'll let you kick off the Broncos.
Well, talk about some star-studded signings. A bit of in-house controversy, somewhat, about some of these. I'm not sure if any of that was intentional. With the Brody Kennedy signing and what they've done, I think that they've got a very strong backline because of it. And you look at, because obviously, like you've spoken about, the whole idea there was actually just to sign Levi Raymond. And then there was James Thorne, who you brought in as well. So I think that that's a very strong spine that you've managed to build up. If you look at some of the losses, I think that if I had to name a single person who I think is the biggest out of all of those, I think I would actually say Jordan Williams.
I'd agree.
I think that, I think that I think Sam Herben's going to do some great things. But he was kind of in and out of a few different roles. And I think that him leaving and bringing in Brody Kennedy makes a lot of sense, because especially with the versatility of Joey Kelly, the willingness might not be there to play wing, but the ability certainly is. Then you have, I really think it's just Jordan Williams that's really going to be huge. I think Will Met is a pretty good signing, though, to bring in, especially James Thorne as well, for the defensive presence, playing in that hooker position. But yeah, Lachlan Martin is going to do pretty decent as well, I think. Obviously, the commissioner, if he doesn't go well, then don't know what's happening. But just Jordan Williams is all I can think of.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Gilly's sort of gone off a bit wayward this season, trying plays in new areas, with Cooper Gronk coming on in the second row at half-time, I believe. But then also Lachlan Martin, used to that number 11 position at Penrith. He's going to be starting at that number 8 role this week. And Gilly's just sort of trying plays in different areas, and I'm sure he's simmed over at least 50 to 100 games, and he knows where each individual player can perform to their best. And, Brody Kennedy, he's brought in players that are going to compete for what they want. And just having that competition with Joey Kelly and Brody Kennedy, it's annoying, but you're going to get the best out of both of your players, because they're competing for what they want. And if you have two people competing for each other, hopefully they're going to be at their best. And then talking about the rookies, Wilmot and Marks. Well, Wilmot, he's the top class of the Mines competition last season. He's short of the best prop in the comp, and he's brought in some excellent depth. It's class all over the park for the Broncos. It's going to be an exciting year for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an exciting year for them. They just keep on bringing in incredible players. I think they make another push for top of the table, even push the comp. I just think that they're built so well that they're able to do that.
Well, I think that about sums it up then. We'll move on to the Sea Eagles. I think the Sea Eagles, they're in for another big year here. They've replaced some big players that they lost, and they also got Kane Chapman Kenny to come back home. Clay, I know you've played for the Sea Eagles, and you're constantly up against them at the RABBITOHs. How do you think they've done?
They've done, considering who they've lost in the positions, I think they've done really well to replace them. Like, you got Jordan Williams replacing probably Bennett, then you got Chapman Kenny coming back home, and then Isaac Edwards is another good signing for the halves. You got the rookies who do a nice job.
You know, definitely there. And Kane Chapman Kenny just brings in, it's sort of similar to the Broncos. You have Chaz Dingo, 2 star fullbacks there for them. And that's just going to create competition, as I've already said. Then, you know, they've got the Ben O'Donnells. And then also some of their rookies, you know, Lachlan Holmes coming in. He was the star winger for the Bathurst Blue Tongues in the grand final again. And then, you know, the enforcer of the Brisbane forward pack last season, Jordan Williams. He's just going to come and he's just going to light the house down there with the Sea Eagles. And he's going to be on top. He's going to want to have a really good season for them. And he's just want to, you know, get the Sea Eagles on top again.
It just feels unfair. Like, it just feels so unfair that they've just gone ahead and signed him. Like, it makes sense, obviously. They're within the cap and everything, but just imagine being any other team watching the Sea Eagles somehow get even more cracked because they've signed KCK and bloody Jordan Williams. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
You might as well go back to the mines if you ever want to win a premiership.
Yeah, there's no chance of it happening in the SRL because the Sea Eagles have 2 hands on that trophy already, and
they cannot possibly lose it from here.
Yeah. Speaking of, we'll move on to our ladder predictions for this season. Tyrone Clay, why don't you kick us off and give us your prediction first up?
Okay, so how do we want to do it? Bottom to top?
Yeah, go bottom to top.
All right,
give us a little spiel about each team.
So last place, I think this is a no-brainer. Newcastle. I think they've lost too many good players and haven't replaced them well enough. They'll be down the bottom. Ninth, they've got Para. Same situation. They've lost their 2 keys, and personally haven't perfectly replaced them. 8th, I've got the Warriors. I think I like some of their signings. I think they'll be exactly like last season. 7th, I've got Panthers. I just think not having KCK and some of those people, I think that they won't do as well. They'll drop off a bit, and they'll miss finals. And then 6th, I've got the new boys, Melbourne, missing finals. It's hard to place Melbourne because we haven't seen them play yet. So I'll just put them mid-table. And then going into finals, we got 5th, the Cowboys. I like what they're doing. Even losing Sakau, Moscow, they've replaced them really well. 4th, I've got the Raiders. I think they always seem to be up and around there. Losing Tauranga Halfway would be massive, but I think they'll do all right. 3rd, I've got my team, South Sydney. I think we recruited well from last season and we'll push into finals. 2nd, I've got Gilly's team, the Broncos. I think they are up there every year. I think they'll do well again. And then 1st, no-brainer, Manly. They're just always there. Pass.
They certainly are. They're certainly always up there. I may as well give my little prediction next. I'll go through the teams. Clay, I've got the same bottom 4 as you. I've gone with the Newcastle Knights. I think they've really struggled to recruit. There's a few circumstances outside their control for that, but nonetheless, I feel like they're going to be down the bottom. They did well in the preseason, but I think come SRL game day, they're going to fall off a cliff. Ninth, I've got the Eels. Eddie Midliver's going to damage their chances, and there's no chance of them getting up past ninth because of having Eddie in the team.
Of course.
Eighth, I've got the Warriors. Not tipping them to not get the spoon this year, but there's not enough improvement for me to justify putting them higher than that. Panthers, I think their key losses are going to really hurt them. They've downgraded their forward pack from what it used to be. Although it's still strong, I still tip them to be down the bottom end of the ladder. The Rabbitohs have done well, but I'm putting them at 6th. I think they just missed finals. Not because they're bad, but because the teams ahead are just much better. Canberra at 5th. I think Rohan and Luke Thompson, the halves, are going to tear the competition to shreds. And I'll tip them to go 5th. At 4th, I've got my team, the Brisbane Broncos. I would tip me higher, but I think that upgrades are going to have a pretty big effect, and we didn't have that many this season. So that's why I'm tipping us to go 4th. The new kids on the block, the Melbourne Storm, I'm tipping to place 3rd. Will Kay, he's done a great job to build this team, and I think they'll be a real force to compete with. 2nd, the North Queensland Cowboys, absolute class from Lord and Moana. Don't see them finishing outside the finals, let alone outside the top 2. And number 1, Matty Harris, that's the one. Leading his team again to another minor premiership is what I tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely there. And moving on with myself, at the bottom I've got the Knights. Sort of the amount of rookies that they've brought in, it's a massive risk. It could pay dividends, but you've got all these sides, and we've spoken about the backlines of some. They're just absolute class. There's competition. Broncos, Panthers, Sea Eagles, Storm. If they come up against any of those, they need to watch out. And then moving up the Warriors at 9th, sort of, they've brought in players that can handle the losses that they've had, but there's really no improvements that the players that they signed can bring with them. And then the Rabbitohs, they've brought back some players and then gotten some new ones as well at the same time, but it's going to take a while for them to gel, I reckon, and it just might need a season just to gel together, and might need to just, batten down the hatches there at Souths and just get something cooking there for the seasons to come. The Eels, I've got them at 7th. A bit further up than you boys, but honestly, I've done lots of sims and I've been in, contact with Luke Short, and I really like what we've been doing. And there've been the trials were promising as well, but then also just behind the doors as well. There's lots of promising stuff. Panthers, they've got that experience. They've got the forward pack there, but just not the class at the back. We've spoken about it. It's the back lines that can, do the damage, those long range efforts, and then the short range at the same time. That's where the points come from. And they're just missing that key enforcer at the back. Sea Eagles, I've got them at 5th to make the finals, and it's really competitive, this top 5, in my opinion. Sea Eagles, they've got class all over the park, and they've brought in class with Jordan Williams. They're going to be the enforcers, and it's going to be hard. The Cowboys, 4th. Well, the beating heart of Queensland there, Chris Lord, he's going to get them over the line. He's going to get them into the finals, and they could go anywhere, honestly.
Famous Queenslander Chris Lord.
They're a live wire, aren't they? They definitely are, the Cowboys. They could be all over the place. They could be down, and then somebody comes in and they'll put 30 on. Honestly, it can happen. The Raiders, nothing's changed. They've made the grand final twice in a row now. They haven't come away with the points, but the team is pretty much unchanged. They've brought in class with Cahill, and they're just reuniting old combinations here, bringing the two brothers back. Tim James in there as well. It's unchanged the spine, and they're just sort of doing what the Rabbitohs need to do. They need to just keep the same team, batten down the hatches and stick with it. And that's sort of where it'll turn out with the Raiders. That's what the Rabbitohs need to follow. The Storm, I just see the amount of experience and the amount of good words that have been said about these players that Will Kay have signed over the off-season. Will Kay's just gone to every club and just taken the spark, the agility, the inspiration for them and just put them straight in the team. Liam spoke about it with MBT. At the end of every game, he was the best player for the Warriors last season. And he's always up and about, and he's always in the sheds. He's always wanting to win them, get them over the line. The Storm, they're going to be competitors this season, in my opinion. The Broncos up at the top. I've got them coming away with the minor premiership. And that's just because of the class, the team that they have there, and the work that Jilly's done is absolutely amazing. And keeping it all under the cap at the same time is even harder. But he got there. He got this team. It's a titan of a team, and I'm really excited to see how they perform in the SRL this season. And I think Liam, you're up next.
Yeah, it's looking like it. So number one on the ladder, I'm gonna go for the heart of the Southern Hemisphere, the Auckland Warriors. I think that the Wars' immense defensive pressure is gonna take them over the line. I'm completely serious about that. Anyways, next I'm gonna go for the Seagulls. I think that their signings are just absolutely stacked. Like I said, it's ridiculous the fact that they're bringing in KCK and Williams. Before I go any further on this list, I do want to say this is actually all very tightly packed for me. I do think it's going to be a very close season in the SRL for the first 6 teams, somewhere around there. After Seagulls, we've got Broncos. I think that they did a fantastic job recruiting. Their spine has become much more well balanced, and I do think that if they do keep that back three, where they have Kennedy at fullback and Kelly on the wing, I think they've kind of got a bit of a 3-headed monster out the back there with players as well. Cowboys, I think, were fantastic as well. They got lots of +6s in, and they've already been a class team for so long. Obviously, I think losing Snow means that they can round out their spine a bit better as well, and use their substitutions more effectively with their prop rotation and forwards. After that, I'm going to go Storm. I think that they've just recruited absolutely fantastic. I think they've put a good forward pack in place, a good spine in place, some backs that can really score some tries. So I reckon they'll do some damage on the scoreboard. After that, I got the Raiders. I think the Raiders, obviously not really much of a recruiting powerhouse, but more just the fact that they've been to 2 grand finals in a row and not much has changed. In fact, they're only going to get better, just like the majority of SRL teams do. After that, I'm going to go with Rabbitohs. Like I said, there's a reason that I said everything would be so close, because anyone who thinks that the Rabbitohs are going to slide after the signings they've made would just, it just doesn't check out. They've been fantastic signings, so it's a bit of an awkward spot to have them in 7th, because I actually do rate their signings great, and I think that Dusty Richards is in for a good season as well. After that, I'm going to go with Penrith. I think that they've had some massive losses with Martin and also with KCK, who kind of dragged them into a fair few games. After that, I'm going to go with the Eels. I think that they've definitely lost a bit of class, but what they don't have in the class, they do have in the culture. And then after that, it's Knights, because unfortunately, I think they're about on par with a team mostly made up of Mines players. And I don't say that in a disrespectful sense. I mean that in a literal sense.
Yeah.
Like they have all just come from playing Mines.
Definitely not.
Well, I think we all had the consensus that the Knights would be the Wooden Spooners. I think everyone has the Eels pretty low except Eddie.
You watch out for those Eels, baby.
I think Seagulls are in everyone's finals. Broncos, Storm, all up there for most people except Clay. There's a pretty general consensus, but we've all got some weird picks. The weirdest one I think is Liam Rodgers, number 1 Warriors.
This is
immense defensive pressure, bro. You got to back the boys.
What's going on there? First place.
You got to back the boys.
I tell you what, if that happens, I'll make my character go bald. That's the bet.
You gotta back the boys.
That's the first
In fact,
bet.
no, I'll get a green mohawk, like a Warriors green.
Warriors green. I like that.
Yeah, that's.
Nah, you gotta get like an ice bro tattoo.
An ice bro tattoo.
Or you do an ice bro tattoo.
Yeah, we'll sort that out with Lachlan. That's what we'll do.
Yeah. Nah, up the waz.
All right. Well,
Definitely.
I think it's time to move on to our round 1 matchups, and everyone's predictions for what's going to happen in that game. Starting off with the Melbourne Storm against the Brisbane Broncos at Amy Park for our season kickoff. Eddie, how do you think this one's going to go?
Oh, what a matchup it will be at Amy Park, the home of the Melbourne Storm. It's going to be an amazing game. And, coming back since season 1, the Storm, they're going to be looking to be live wires. But the Broncos, they've It's all over the place, and honestly, it's going to be a hard game to determine. But I honestly do believe the Broncos will come away with it. They've just got too much class, and also at the same time, you know, at the start of season 5, there was sort of position changes, and you know, Rohan, my apologies, playing at the number 9 at the start of the season. They're sort of looking to be more down to earth with who they want, where they want people playing, and they look very confident coming into that game. Yeah, the next team I believe is of the night, North Queensland Cowboys, Auckland Warriors. Well, it's your team here, Liam. How do you think they're going to go?
Was 13 plus.
Last 13 plus.
Immense defensive pressure. Hopefully we do get up for it. I reckon we did pretty well in the trials, but like as we say, that's a completely different thing to the SRL game. I think that we're actually all pretty excited for this game in the Warriors camp because this is it. This is a chance for us to actually start our season and get a good understanding of what we actually are as a team. Because obviously the Cowboys, we've all predicted them to have a fantastic season. So that's going to be a really big deal in terms of just understanding whether we are as good as our trial form indicates or not. And unfortunately, our second rower got himself suspended.
Of course. But
I am going to be tipping Cowboys 13 plus.
yeah, as much as I want the Warriors to do well, I just think the Cowboys will just be too good.
Very good team. If you're going to lose 13 plus to anyone in the SRL, I reckon Cowboys is a good shout. So it just depends on what happens.
I honestly reckon for the Warriors, it's going to be if they can play their footy. Because the Warriors have an amazing style of footy. We can all agree with that. But are they going to be able to play it for a consistent 80 minutes?
That's the problem.
That's pretty much it. Stay disciplined too.
Our next game was the Parramatta Eels up against the Canberra Raiders at ANZ Stadium. How do we think this one's going to go, Clay?
Canberra. I just think they have too much class for the Eels. I just think they'll just tire them out over time. Ooh.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that. I think the Eels will, the Raiders will run away with this one. I know you got excited there for a second, Eddie, but no, the Raiders. Well, they will run away with this one, I think.
Well, I got to disagree with Tyrone there. We're going to get too tired over time. Luke Short is the fitness freak of the SRL, and if somebody can keep up with the work that he does consistently, it's him, and the effect rolls off on his other teams. It could go either way. I'm not going to be a biased Paris supporter. I'd love us to win, but it honestly, in my opinion, it's up in the air at the moment. The Canberra Raiders coming off the loss in a grand final. It could be any team. It could be anybody's team to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going for Raiders as well. They're a ridiculously strong side, and it's not even because I don't credit the Eels. It's just because outright I think that Raiders, the Green Machine, there's something else.
The Green Machine. That's something I haven't actually heard for a while. I think in the SRL we tend to call it the Milk, but let's bring back the Green Machine.
Ooh.
Definitely.
It's the Milk, the Green Machine. There's lots of nicknames for it.
Well, our next game, we'll move on to the Newcastle Knights against the Penrith Panthers at McDonald Jones Stadium. Is it the Panthers by how much?
Oh.
I mean, the Newcastle Knights are at home, and it's up in the air again. But I honestly, in my opinion, I just see the Panthers taking it away. They've got all that experience in their forward pack and then their back line. They might not have the spark, but you just need to watch out. Their back line full of rookies here for the Knights, and get around one. You know, Morrison, Fisher, it could be over in the first 15, 20 minutes.
Definitely. Also to point out, see that very few people are actually going the Knights. I don't know why, because just
I think it's just their trial.
I think it's their trial.
Yeah, I have a feeling. Yeah, the flogging that they put up against the Eels.
Yeah, I just don't think trial form will be like SRL.
Yeah.
All it takes is just one win to completely shake up the ladder. So I guess that's why the ladder predictions we're all pretty interested in them anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess that wraps that up then. We move on to the final game of the round. It's the Manly Sea Eagles and the South Sydney Rabbitohs at Brookvale Oval. little season 2-3 grand final rematch. Clay, are you backing your boys?
I will be backing my boys, but that's all that I'm going to say.
Well-
you gotta have some faith, bro.
You
I'm
definitely
not going to
do.
be too biased.
I was talking to Lockie about it, and in his opinion, the commissioner, this is going to be the clash of round 1 here, Manly, and he's excited to see it. And just both sides having so much strike all over the field, but talking about the Rabbitohs, are they going to be able to get that composure, the combinations right early? Because that's how you're going to do it. The Seagulls, they haven't lost much. They've signed well. They've got even more class in their backline and their forwards. They're going to need to come out of the park here, the Rabbitohs, and then they're going to need to come firing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because I think Manly, my tip will be Manly 13 plus again. I'm tipping all 13 plus games this week. And I think Manly will run away with it pretty early. I think. Oh, to be fair though, actually, I was going to say I'm interested to see what Matty Harris does with Kane Chapman-Kenny playing in the centres. It feels a bit of a waste considering he can play on the wing.
Yeah. But they have a plan.
That'll be interesting to me. It'll be. I think you'll probably see them swap with Dingo at halftime. That could be dangerous. That could be because he won't have used too much stamina. Going through a tired Rabbitohs forward pack, that could be deadly.
Yeah, I can see that. Also, it'd be good to see what Jesse Bennett does up against his former club.
Yeah, we'll need a good game to beat the Manly Seagulls. I don't really see it going any other way. I think you good there, Leroy?
Bit of a pant going on here on SRL360. We're getting excited for season 6, aren't we, boys?
Of course.
How good's the SRL?
Oh, how good's it gonna be? I'm looking forward to season 6.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm looking forward to season 7 personally.
Oh no.
But no, it's gonna be fantastic. There's so many good matchups coming up in this first round, especially. I think Storm versus Broncos is my personal favorite.
What a way to start round 1. The new team against the Shining Lights of Brisbane.
Shining Lights of Brisbane. Wait until the Finns get in the SRL.
Oh, mate, there's so many.
We can't be having that. We can't be having that.
We can't.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Oh, there's heaps of stuff coming.
Well, it's been good to chat to you boys today, but I think that just about wraps up our episode as we near the hour mark. Do we have any final remarks?
Bring on season 6.
Bring on season
Up
6.
the Waz. Season
Waz.
8. Let's get it.
South.
Quick clip Jilly saying up the Waz.
Up the Waz. Up the Waz.
We need that. We need that as like a soundboard suggestion.
Yeah, man.
Up the
Yeah.
Of
Waz.
course. We all
How
get a little
good.
up the Waz. We all have a bit of Waz in us.
Yes, so true.
Alright, well, I hope you all had a good night, and we certainly have. So we'll see you next week, next Monday at 7 p.m. on SRL360. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Wow.